Previously, we looked at a chapter relating to the consumption of meat products from clean and unclean animals. Well, I guess you'd consume them from clean animals, but you wouldn't consume them from unclean ones, and that was kind of neat. Now we're moving on to look at childbirth and uncleanness. So here we have a section relating to a woman giving birth to a child who is born male. Now this is something that didn't used to require any form of commentary at all, but here we are in the modern world. Although someone could be watching this in the future, so this is retro. So we'll call this retro-futuristic. So when a woman gives birth to a child, there is essentially two possibilities. It is either born male or it is born female. And in this particular instance, in this specific event here, we are referring to a child who is born male. So we have a child that is born into the world unclean. And the clean and unclean aspect is the second portion of this verse. So a woman during her menstruation process is considered unclean during a particular section of that process. And there's a parallel between that uncleanness and the uncleanness of giving birth. And that is what the comparison is being made here, and the same rules, terms, and conditions will apply. Leviticus 12:3, and on the 8th day the child shall be circumcised. We have seen a lot of stuff in the Bible relating to circumcision from the time when God was creating a relationship with Abraham. Abraham was to be circumcised and his people were to be circumcised. God made a lot of promises to Abraham, and the circumcision acted as a visual, physical representation or sign of the covenant between God and Abraham and his descendants. And as we went through the generations of Abraham, and we see his son Isaac, and then Isaac's son Jacob, and Jacob is also known as Israel, for when Jacob wrestled with God, God gave him the name Israel. The people that we're looking at now are the descendants of Israel, and it is the nation of Israel, the people that Moses is leading right now. So this is the continuation of that covenant. That circumcision, it needs to be done. Circumcision is the process in which the foreskin is removed from the male genitalia. It is quite the procedure. And I've heard it said before that at 8 days old, the healing process and the blood flow of the young child, the male infant, promotes faster healing, and it makes the circumcision process much easier than if it's done earlier or later or as an adult. I've heard that's quite unpleasant to go through. A lot of what we've looked at previously in the law deals with the whole concept of clean and unclean. And circumcision is a way of being clean. And there is medical research demonstrating that circumcision is relatively effective at reducing AIDS and HIV transmission, which is kind of interesting. Circumcision definitely helps with staying clean in a physical sense, but what we see here demonstrated is more in the spiritual sense, in the separation and the consecration of God's people. Leviticus 12:4, then she shall remain separated 33 days to be purified from her loss of blood. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the court of the sanctuary until the days of her purifying are over. So we have a male child being born to a woman. How great is that? She's probably excited. And for the first 7 days, she is considered unclean, and this is a very restrictive type of being unclean. So there's not really a whole lot she can be doing right here. This is similar to the ritual and the rites associated with the uncleanness described by the menstruation process. And then we have the 8th day. And on the 8th day, the child gets circumcised, and that's kind of cool. And then the next 33 days, she is to be separated again as being unclean. But this second portion here is not as restrictive as the first. She is still barred from participating in any of the holy activities. So either going to temple or going to the tabernacle. I guess it would be the tabernacle in this sense, but later on that's what it would become. And participating in any of the holy meals and offerings and any of that stuff. She would not be allowed to participate in any of those events. So 40 days in total. The first 7 are a little bit more extreme than the rest, but afterwards everything is good. Leviticus 12 and 5. But if the child she bears is a girl, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her periodic impurity, and she shall remain separated 66 days to be purified from her loss of blood. So now we have the birth of a female child, a girl being born. How cool is that? The time frame for the separation due to the uncleanness is quite a bit different. We see the first, instead of being the first week, it's the first 2 weeks. Now, that is a very big difference, but the difference is that after the first week with the male child, the child was circumcised. And after that circumcision, that child would have been made clean by the ritual of the circumcision. It is a purification ritual. Whereas with the female child, there is no option to do that. So as a result, the time of the impurity, the time of uncleanness, is twice the length. This is due to the woman being unclean and the daughter being unclean. So it's twice as long as before. That is the best rationale I've seen to this question, for it's not really explained very well in the Bible. It just says the amount of days. It doesn't really expand on that thought. So that is just a hypothesis. Another one is that in the ancient world, it was believed that there was some physical aspect to giving birth to a daughter that was more difficult or more strenuous than giving birth to a son. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that is another hypothesis for this situation. Leviticus 12 and 6. When the days of her purifying are completed, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb a year old for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, to the door of the tent of meeting, to the priest. 12 and 7. And he shall offer it before the Lord, and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who has borne a male or female child. So the woman has gone through the purification time frame, and I think she's probably healed a little bit after giving birth. It's kind of a painful experience. So she's probably feeling a lot better now and is able to move around a lot better and is just feeling a little bit better, getting used to having the new baby around. And now she needs to go in and make an offering to the Lord. So we have the lamb as well as an option of birds, the pigeon or the turtle dove. So she takes those in to the priest and gives this offering to the Lord, and there we go. That's the end of that. It gets a little bit more complicated if it's a firstborn son, because then we have the firstborn thing going on, but it doesn't really go into that in this particular chapter, but we've seen a few chapters that go into that. But what if she can't afford a lamb? A lamb is probably a relatively expensive animal. Granted, giving birth here is probably far cheaper than it is to give birth in the United States of America without having any form of insurance. So make of that what you will. Leviticus 12 and 8. If she is unable to bring a lamb for lack of means, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or young pigeons. one for a burnt offering, the other for a sin offering. The priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean. I always like verses like this where God is providing opportunity for those who have less, those who are less fortunate or don't have great amounts of wealth, to have an opportunity to have a relationship with God, the ability to perform these sacrifices and offerings. And this translates through into the New Testament as well. And if anything, it seems that being rich and wealthy is something that keeps people away from God more so than being poor. So make of that what you will.